All right. So, as usual, we will focus on the Pasha of the week and some of the Siches from Rebbe on the Pasha, and then we will get back to ourselves, Mitzvah Hashem, which is always the most important part. Actually, in the Sikha that I'm focusing on is a Sikha that primarily talks about the Haftarah of the Pasha, but it is also connected to the Pasha. But just to be clear and straight, we'll go straight to the Haftarah and then we'll see how that connects to the Pasha. The Haftarah of this Pasha is called Nachamu. And this Haftarah Nachamu is always read by this Pasha Vo'es Chanan. The reason that this Haftarah is read now is not directly connected to the Pasha Vo'es Chanan. It is more directly connected to the period of the year. The entire year, all the Haftarahs throughout the year, all the Haftarahs are related to the Pasha of that week, because they have some similarity to the Pasha. Then towards the end of the year, starting with Pashas Pinchos, or sometimes Matis, depending if they're together, then begin what's called three Pashas, three Haftarahs, which are called Puranusa, of reprimand, of admonishment, of punishment, ending with Chazon Shayo, that's the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, which is always the Shabbos of Pashat Dvorim. And then it starts with 7 Pashiyos, 7 weeks of Nechemta. Nechemta means condolences or giving encouragement and blessing. Starting with this Pasha of Vo'es Chanan, of the first Shabbos after Tisha B'Av. So that after Tisha B'Av comes the beginnings of Nechama, of giving Yidden encouragement and inspiration and so forth, so that despite the fact that we have Tisha B'Av, ultimately the Rebbeinu will bring us back and restore our nation, restore our health, and so forth. And all that leads ultimately to the last Shabbos of these Shabbos, and it's called Pashas Shabbos Tshuva, where the Pashas Tshuva, the Shabbos between Yom Kippur, Rosh and Yom Kippur, is read Shabbos Tshuva. So these Haftarahs, starting from, as I said, from the 3 Shabbosim before, from Pashas Pinchos or Pashas Matis, all the way till Yom Kippur, the Haftarahs are more related to the period of the year than directly to the Pasha of the week. However, we have a rule that despite the fact that directly they're related to the period of the year, but they also have a similarity and a connection to the Pasha of the week. And thus the Rebbe has many sichos where he explains how these Pashas are related, these Haftarahs are related to a particular Pasha in which they read. The Haftarah of this week is called Nachamu, and it's called Nachamu Nachamu. We say Nachamu Nachamu twice. And this is when Hashem says Nachamu. Hashem tells the Nevi'im, just as the Nevi'im before, Yirmiyah and Ishaya, they were reprimanding Eden, and then, particularly Yirmiyah, and then it says to Ishaya, Nachamu, Nachamu, that he sends the Nevi'im that they should inspire the Eden and give them a Nachama, make them feel better, and tell them all the promises that will come to them and all the blessings that will come to them. And it says Nachamu twice. So the Medrash says, why Nachamu twice? Nachamu, Nachamu. This is to atone and to give condolence for the two Botei Beis Hamikdash. The two Botei Hamikdash. The first Beis Hamikdash that was destroyed, and the second Beis Hamikdash that was destroyed. So you have to give him Nechama, and Nechama essentially means that you're giving them a promise and an encouragement that your loss will be restored to you. So essentially, this is like a promise. Yes, you lost the first Beis Hamikdash or the second Beis Hamikdash, but it's going to be restored. It's going to come back in the third Beis Hamikdash. This is essentially how this is related. And as you see clearly, this comes immediately after Tisha B'Av, because Tisha B'Av is the day of the destruction of the first and second Beis Hamikdash. So it comes Nachamu, Nachamu. So the Rebbe asks a very interesting question. The Rebbe's questions in themselves are such insights, and they're so subtle, and they reveal a completely different perspective. The Rebbe asks like this: we had the first Beis Hamikdash, and then we have the second Beis Hamikdash. The first Beis Hamikdash was really in a much higher level of holiness than the second Beis Hamikdash. If you're not familiar, I'll tell you, generally speaking. In the first Beis Hamikdash, there was the Oren HaKodesh. The Kodesh HaKodeshim had the Oren with the Luchas. Anybody knows what that is? The Oren with the Luchas were in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Second Beis Hamikdash did not have the Oren. The Oren was hidden, before the destruction was hidden in the tunnels that Shlomo HaMelech built to protect it against eventuality of the Beis Hamikdash being destroyed. And it's hidden someplace underneath the place of the Beis Hamikdash. Actually, the tunnels, the very convoluted tunnels, nobody discovered them, and hopefully they won't discover them. But it is directly beneath the place of the Kodesh HaKodeshim, of the real Kodesh HaKodeshim. So that there's a Sikha in the Rebbe that explains that in doing so, Shlomo HaMelech has actually established two places for the Oren, in the Kodesh HaKodeshim and in the tunnels below the Kodesh HaKodeshim. It's also Kodesh HaKodeshim. In other words, the Oren is always in its appropriate place. The Kodesh HaKodeshim above ground, the Kodesh HaKodeshim below ground. It's in its
same place.
Same, right, one on top of the other. Much lower, and so the Oren is always in its proper place. So, but the first Beis Hamikdash had the Oren on top. And the first Beis Hamikdash, there were the Urim, the Tumim, the Kohen Gadol had on the breastplate, he had the Shem HaMfurish. I don't know if you're familiar with this. The Kohen Gadol had a breastplate with 12 stones in it, and the stones had the names of the Shvotim. And through that, he was able to respond to the Melech various questions as to, should he do certain things or not. The Urim V'Tumim were like a nevuah in a certain sense. Second, Beis Hamikdash It wasn't. Second Beis Hamikdash, there was the breastplate, because without the breastplate, the Kohen Gadol cannot do the avodah. The Kohen Gadol needs 8 godim, and one of them is this breastplate. But he didn't have the Shem Hamfurish. He didn't have that power to respond to any question. So these are two of the very significant differences between the first and second Beis Hamikdash. This was a much higher level. Therefore, it would seem that the loss of the first Beis Hamikdash, this was a much greater, more painful loss than the loss of the second Beis Hamikdash. So then, when the Navi says, I will restore your loss, restore the first Beis Hamikdash. If you're going to restore the first Beis Hamikdash, so I already have the real thing. Why do I need the second Beis Hamikdash? It says Nachamu, Nachamu. Nachamu, and the two Nachamu is for the first and for the second. But the first is greater than the second, which means if I have the restoration of the first, I don't need the second. I have the greater of the two. Okay, you understand? That's the Rebbe's question, and the Rebbe answers, therefore we have to say that despite the fact that the first Beis Hamikdash was on a higher level in holiness, but there was also a very significant superiority in the second Beis Hamikdash that the first Beis Hamikdash didn't have. And therefore, we say, Nachamu, Nachamu, that you should have restoration of the first and the second Beis Hamikdash. In other words, the third Beis Hamikdash will encompass the qualities of both, the first and the second. What is the special quality of the second over and above the first Beis Hamikdash? So for this, the Rebbe explains, in general, this is the similar difference between tzaddikim and Baalei Tshuva. During the time of the first Beis Hamikdash, the Eden were in Madrega and like tzaddikim. There was Gilui Elokus all over. And what is the Eden of a tzaddik? A tzaddik is the shot that his neshama shines right through, so that he has the illumination, he has the brightness of the godly light that comes through his neshama. This is the thing about tzaddik. What's a Baal Tshuva? A Baal Tshuva is someone who had lost this light, and he was in a completely different place, in a dark place, without the godly light. And then he, through his own labor, he refined his guf, and again brought back this light through his own labor. This is essentially the union of a Baal Tshuva.
The same light of Baal Tshuva and Tzaddik? Or just like a spark of godliness?
I'll come back to this. In Avodas Hashem, in general, in Jewish life, there are three different aspects in our Avodah, in our Jewish life. The three different aspects are Torah, and then there is mitzvahs, which includes all different activities that a person does davening and learning and so forth. And then there is the third, is tshuva. And what is the difference between these three? Torah is something which comes from above, which Hashem gave us. Mitzvahs are aspects that we ourselves create. In order to make tefillin, we have to take a piece of parchment made from hide. You have to clean it up. You have to write the pasha on it. Make tzitzis, we have to make tzitzis.
Aspect of things that we create?
That we made. Tzitzis is something which involves our effort and our activities. Torah came down directly from Hashem. So, if we compare these two, Torah and mitzvahs, how would we understand them? On the one hand, we'll say, hey, Torah is something which Hashem himself wrote. This is the holiest thing that could be, the highest thing, the most spiritual thing, the most godly thing. Clearly, it's straight Hashem's word. On the other hand, it is true it is a very holy thing. But what effect does that have on us? And what effect does it have on the world? It is something which is spiritual and holy and godly. And world is worldly and impure. And therefore, in order that Torah should have any effect, one has to be very, very much refined. To understand a word of Torah, you have to be very refined. Torah, just the presence of Torah does not, it is present, Baruch Hashem, we have the Torah, but it does not have that deep an effect on the world, because it is just higher than the world. Mitzvahs, on the other hand, we are actually working with objects in the world, we're actually transforming them, and making them, bringing them into them a godly light. The Rebbe gives one illustration for this concept. We have sunlight and we have candlelight. Everybody will readily see that sunlight is infinitely greater and more beautiful than candlelight. On the other hand, sunlight is something which exists in the sun, and it comes to us, but we can grasp it. It doesn't become part of our world. It doesn't become part of our world. It gives us light, but it is kind of hovers. It doesn't become part of the world. We can't grasp it. It doesn't change anything here. It comes and goes on a daily basis. A candle is a much smaller light, less effective. But on the other hand, how is this light created? It's created right here in our world. You strike a match and light a candle, and the wick burns down, and that makes light. In other words, this light comes from within our own midst, within our own world. So it has a deeper effect on the world. And this is like Torah and mitzvahs. Like Torah and mitzvahs. Torah comes from above. It is very great and very holy, but it doesn't have such a direct connection, attachment to the world. Mitzvahs are less holy, but they have a direct connection to the world. Now, there's a third level which is called tshuva. And what is tshuva? Mitzvahs, which is, I said, is very close to the world, and it is actually made from the world itself. But how do we know what to do, how to make tefillin? From the Torah. It is not something that we saw a parchment and say, oh, I know what this parchment is for, to write film. I saw wool and said, oh, I know what wool is for, to make tzitzis. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't come. It's not the world has discovered godliness. We have a godly command in the Torah that says that if you take wool and you make tzitzis, you take parchment, you make film, then it becomes a mitzvah. So even though you make it materials from the world, but the essential direction as to how do you intention that you can make a mitzvah out of this, that doesn't come from the world. That comes from above, from the Torah. In other words, it is true that with mitzvahs we actually imbue means we actually connect God with world, but it is that world itself found God. It is that the Torah tells us how to connect God with world. Tshuva is a step further. Tshuva is the pshat. A person who was very distant from Torah, from Yiddishkeit, which means he does not have the light of Torah. He's in the dark. And if he is in the dark, how does he find his way? He finds his way because he himself, this physical entity, this person, is a godly creation. And when he examines his own mind, he examines his own heart, he examines his own self, he finds that he has godliness in himself. So this is not something that comes from outside, from above, that's given to him. This is something that he discovers from within the worldly presence itself. This is true. There's the phenomenal power of tshuva. Like for instance, mitzvahs can only affect things that are permissible. Like for instance, the person, Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, you may have learned it already. When a person eats l'shem shomayim and eats with the intent that with the strength that he gets from this food, he will learn and daven. So then the food itself becomes elevated into holiness and godliness. What if he eats something that's forbidden food? He eats something that's not kosher. That's for sure. He ate something that's not kosher, and it gave him physical strength. And he went and he did use that strength to do mitzvahs, to learn and daven. Then he thereby elevate this food into holiness? No. Mitzvahs do not have the capability, Torah does not have the capability to permeate, to break through klipet, now that which is totally outside of the realm of Kedusha. It can only elevate that which is permissible. It's a different, a level that is able to receive, to relate to holiness. But that which is totally outside of the realm of Kedusha, it cannot affect it. It cannot reach it. In other words, that which is in the deepest depth, in the deepest darkness of the world itself, it cannot affect. Whereas tshuva has the power to reveal godliness, even in that which is totally devoid. Devoid means empty of godliness. Even if a person did very severe transgressions, very serious averos, with tshuva, he can elevate that. He can purify himself, even from that impurity, which means that tshuva has no limits. It can find godliness in everything and reveal the godliness in everything, in the godliness of the world itself. This is, the Rebbe says, the difference between the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash. The first Beis Hamikdash was very holy. Actually, we had three Botei Mikdash. Now we had the Mishkan. We had the Mishkan in the desert. Then we had the first Beis Hamikdash and we had the third Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash. The Mishkan in the desert was also made of physical material, wood and so forth. But the principle of the Mishkan was the godly light that came down into the Mishkan. The wood itself and the place where the Mishkan stood did not become holy. You know that the Mishkan traveled from place to place throughout the 40 years that even were in the desert. And then when it came later on in Eretz Yisrael, it also stood in one place and then traveled in a couple of places. All the places where the Mishkan stood, after the Mishkan was moved away from there, that place was no longer holy. In other words, the Mishkan did not have an effect on the physical part of the world. It had the godly light there, which came from above, but it didn't have an effect on the physical. The first Beis Hamikdash, was established in this place, and it had this established place. It couldn't move. This was an established place, exactly where it should be, and it was made of stone, not of wood, which means it had much more deeper relationship to the physicality of the world. Nevertheless, after the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the kedusha, the holiness of that place, was lost, because the whole holiness of the first Beis Hamikdash was due to the godly light that came into it, and therefore that remained above, just like sunlight comes down and it illumines the world, but it does not become part of the world. Therefore, when it was removed, when it was destroyed, that kedusha was lost. It's an interesting thing, it's a halacha in the Rambam. You may have learned it when you were learning about the Beis Hamikdash. Second Beis Hamikdash, however, second Beis Hamikdash did have effect on the physical element itself. And this is why the place of the Beis Hamikdash today, which is 2,000 years after its destruction, is still holy. We're not allowed to walk there. It's still holy because that kedusha had taken effect on the physical place itself. This is the second Beis Hamikdash. The second Beis Hamikdash, in other words, had this advantage, this power of tshuva, that it can have effect on the physical element itself. And this is why Hashem says to the Levim, Nachamu, Nachamu. You should reassure Eden and say that their losses will be restored. Not only the first Beis Hamikdash will be restored. In the third Beis Hamikdash will be included the first and also the second, because there is a special maila, special superior quality in the second Beis Hamikdash over and above the first, in the fact that it is something which has an effect, it becomes part and parcel of the world. This is briefly the Rebbe's Sikha. And now, as we said, we want to turn to ourselves and understand what this Sikha is teaching us. anyone coming to the yeshiva, there are 3 stages in this experience. It's important to understand the 3 stages. When one first comes to the yeshiva, it's a novelty. And he's all excited about, wow, oh, I never heard anything like this. This is beautiful. This is so inspiring, so illuminating. This is like the first Beis Hamikdash. It's all exciting. And he is kind of floating above ground. This is not a false experience. It's a true experience. Because someone who has never really learned Torah, never learned Chassidus, never really lived the Jewish life, yes, indeed, it is very, very inspiring.
Even if you did.
Sorry?
Even if you did.
Even if you did, the yeshiva gives a different aura,
experience.
different experience. 24 hours, it's a different experience. But we have to understand that this experience is something that is coming to him from the environment, from his friends, from his Rosh Yeshiva, and from everything that the yeshiva gives him. Then there is a second phase. The second stage is where he begins to realize, hey, this is not so simple. To learn a piece of Gemara, you really have to labor. It's not so easy. It's not just inspiration. Ultimately, if you just get inspired, oh, the rabbi gave such a beautiful shir. What did he say? It was very beautiful. What did he say? It was very inspiring. That's not what the yeshiva is about. Yes, it is inspiring, but ultimately, one comes to the realization that unless you really labor, unless you review what you learned, and test it in your own mind and try to make sense that you understand it, you get nothing from it. That's so not nothing, you were inspired. But as soon as the inspiration is off, it goes to sleep. This is the second stage. And this stage this is the real challenge, when one realizes that things are not going to be so easy. They're not going to come in automatically. The inspiration is going to stick with me. It's not. It's not going to stick. Unless you labor and unless you you really understand what you're learning. And take it into your own intelligence, in your own heart, it is not going to stay. The first Beis Hamikdash was extremely, extremely holy. But when it was destroyed, it was taken off, nothing remained. It's an amazing thing. Because the inspiration rose up, went up to a higher level, and nothing remained. Many times, one says, oh, I wish I felt today like I felt 2 days ago. It was so wonderful. Why did I lose it? I don't understand. It's good that you lost it. So you know, this is not something that you just hold on and it stays. This is something that it has to be really understood. You have to labor. Light that comes from the sun is beautiful. Let's say somebody enjoys the sunlight. And the sunlight comes and sunlight goes. So, okay, so what did you really accomplish during the light? What did the light provide for you? Oh, it was beautiful. What did it provide for you? What did you do during this light? Did you daven? Did you learn? Did you put on tefillin, which you can only do by day? Nothing remains. This is the Simarini. There is a requirement of personal involvement, personal labor. This is like establishing the inyan, the Torah, in yourself. It is, everybody knows already, I saw already the reaction, this is very challenging. Because when we come to this second stage, we start being disappointed. We start kind of saying, oh, it's no longer so inspiring. You really have to labor. And then comes the third stage. The third stage really is the most important, in effect. What happens after one leaves the yeshiva? If one thinks that just like you go to school, right? You go to school and you study engineering, you study medicine, you study anything. Now you graduated. Now you are an accomplished engineer. You are going on your own. Is this going to maintain your Torah? And is this going to maintain your spirit and your avodas Hashem? This approach will outside of the yeshiva? Absolutely not. This is not going to maintain it. One of the principles of the period, the second period in the yeshiva, is to understand that this labor is a must. It is not just a means to an end. Okay, I will learn it. Now I understand it. And now it's going to be my son's source of inspiration. It's not that. It's not like that. It is a must every day. It has to be started all over again. This is why we start our day with Moide Ani Lefonecha. We start our day with saying Moide Ani Lefonecha L'chayikayim Shech Zartu V'nishmose B'chemla. You returned Nishama to me. In other words, you start from scratch every day. This is even while being in yeshiva. When you go out of yeshiva, then you're totally on your own. And only that which you have absorbed on your own, in your own mind, in your own heart, in your own physical makeup, only that stays with you. And one of the principles that stays with you is that I must learn every day. There's no such thing as I already graduated, I don't have to learn anymore. It just doesn't happen. The Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe says, and it's written in the Hayom Yom, they read Hayom Yom every day over here, right? Mm-hmm. So if you came across it, if you didn't, you'll come across it in Mitzvah. The Rebbe says like this: that a chosid, a yid, has to daven with kavanah. You have to daven with kavanah. You have to know about that. Prepare yourself for davening, and daven with concentration and so forth. Even though, in truth, you can be yoitze. Yoitze means you can satisfy your basic obligation, by putting on tefillin, saying Krishma, saying Shemoneh Esrei, and running off into business. So if a person is going to satisfy his basic obligation, but he's not just going to put on tefillin and Krishma, he's going to daven the whole davening, from Matoiva all the way till after Leinu, and he's going to say everything and Tirim and everything. But his mind is going to be elsewhere. He's going to say everything. His mouth is going to get real practice, but his mind is going to be elsewhere. So he's still a very fine yid, right? Look at it. It took a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour to daven. But if one davens this way, the Rebbe says, everything, all inspiration eventually embers, dies down. And it comes to a point, there's no question, it comes to a point where he will become, that to do a regular obligation, a obligatory mitzvah will be a challenge. And to go to shul for mincha is going to be a difficult thing. Everything becomes difficult. Without the spirit, without inspiration, every little thing is a challenge. We know it right here. In yeshiva, while we're still in yeshiva. To get up on time, to be in time for Chassidus in the morning is a challenge. Believe me, this is so small a challenge relative to what awaits you outside of the yeshiva. Can you imagine being involved a whole day not in learning and davening? Getting up in the morning and having your mind, okay, how do I get to the office? How do I get to my school? Whatever it is, a completely different world. And then davening becomes a burden. Doing mitzvahs becomes a burden. And eventually, God forbid, it doesn't make sense. What is it about? That's how far it is possible to go. This is why a person says, oh, I wished I had the inspiration of yesterday, of a week ago, of a year ago. I've seen this myself with Unilite graduates from this yeshiva who were very good students. And then somehow they did not have a proper seder in their day, and eventually they started thinking about, because Abba Tshuva has all kinds of backgrounds, and he started thinking, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do this, things which in yeshiva he would think, it's out of the question, you can't do this. Now all of a sudden it's not so terrible. This is what the Nachamul Nachman, this is what the Rebbe says. The third Beis HaMikdash, which is the one that is the permanent one, this is what happens when you leave the yeshiva, when you are actually building the world for Hashem. The third Beis HaMikdash. The third Beis HaMikdash has to encompass the first, the inspiration from the yeshiva, all the wonderful Fabrengens and Nigunim and everything else. And also, it has to encompass every word and every line that you ever learned. Nothing should get lost. Nothing is superfluous. Nothing is extra. we are talking over here. This is not, an elementary school. This is not a grade school. This is not even in the media school. This is this is really adults. Everyone over here is an adult in his own right. And each one of us should test ourselves. If we don't have a system of testing, each one of us has to test ourselves. What did I learn today? How well do I know it? And how well do I understand it? And in Chassidus, particularly, what does it mean to me? Chassidus has to be something that speaks to me. What does it mean to me? One of the things that Chassidus is supposed to give a person is a perspective of what Jewish life is about. How do you go to daven? How do you go to do mitzvah? What is behind this all? What is the godly inspiration that you have? So that the Nachamu, it says, yes, Baruch Hashem, we are in yeshiva, and everything that we have lost is going to be restored. The opportunity is right here to restore and rebuild everything. But we have to know that it is not something that comes automatic. Anything comes automatically. Like the sunlight comes automatically. Easy come, easy go. That's an English expression. I'm sure in every language there's that expression. Right? How do you say it in Russian? No? Easy come, easy go. And you should know like this. We have in Torah a klal, a rule, that anything that comes easy is not Kedusha. Kedusha comes hard. And the analogy, the moshel for this is very simple. In Kedusha, you have to climb up a hill. In Klippa, you go down the hill. Down the hill goes automatically. You don't even need fuel to go down the hill. I put the car in neutral and boom. Up the hill, you really have to work hard. And we here in Yeshiva have to know that we are constantly climbing up a hill. Every day you have to make a little step. But you know that a little step up the hill requires a lot of energy, a lot of effort. And as we spoke once in the past, I don't know if I spoke to all of them, or probably this was in general class, about taking a step. Making a step, you make a step with one foot, but then you have to bring the other foot to join the first foot. In other words, you have to move completely. Forget about the old place and move into the new place. This is what yeshiva is. Yeshiva is not a place for inspiration. Yeshiva is a place to build real human beings, men who will, when they come out of the yeshiva, they represent a living person, a living Jew. And they become inspiration to others. And they give strength to others. And they have their own strength to carry it through in their lives. That's what the yeshiva is about. It has enormous capability. It can take a person from under the ground, like Al Tshuva, take him out, pull him out from the depths. Yes, but that is not the end of it. To pull him out and put him on dry land. and let him start walking on his own. This is why, again, you have to have in mind the labor part, the second stage is not very exciting. But this is what really makes man out of us. Maybe it should help each one of us. We should both understand this, realize this, and not be discouraged, chas v'sholom, when it comes hard. Some people be more hard, more difficult to others. Not to be discouraged at all. I know in the yeshiva when I was a bocher, the Rebbe frequently speaks about this. Under normal circumstances, bochrim who are normal, say, without, not having an exposed or confused or anything, sometimes somebody has a good head. It's a blessing. And everything comes easy to him. And that becomes his undoing. You know what undoing means? Huh? Undoing. It works against him. It works against him. That's right. It makes nothing of him. He's so smart, and it works against him because he never got the idea of that what you're learning is valuable. Oh, it's nothing. A child. What does a child think about? I'm doing better than you. That's all I need. I don't need anything else. I have a better mark than you. Boo. It's nothing. What did you learn? And in yeshiva, I've seen it myself. Bochim who had to work very hard, who were not necessarily so smart, they were solid men. They went to the yeshiva and they really got in yeshiva a path in life. And those who were very smart, not necessarily. Some did, and some didn't. Some didn't. They are smart, okay? So they're smarter than everybody. They're smarter than their teachers. They're smarter than their colleagues. They're smarter than the Torah. They don't need anything else. They can figure out on their own. And it worked against them. Chas v'sholom. So when it comes hard, it means that you are touching a sore place. You understand? You're touching a sore place. And you have to really work through it. And we shall help from that. We should accept this and work through this. The second stage, not chas v'sholom, be discouraged. Every day is an accomplishment. There's no limit. There's no minimum. Every day is an accomplishment. When you come out of the yeshiva, you will remember not the inspiration, you remember the hard work. Oh, how wonderful, how terrific that was. That's what you remember. The inspiration, Mela, that can't easy come, easy go. The real thing, this hard work, that's the real thing. And this is going to carry you through in this. So, Rabbi Hatzlocha, every one of us. And you go to Eretz Yisrael and you make them for mention. So we have Melech who is leaving today, and you will be sorely missed. And we hope that you'll be successful, and that you will carry with you the message of today's talk. Remember, you're not going to be in the yeshiva. Makes no difference. You take the yeshiva with you. bocher in yeshiva never leaves the yeshiva. Just like the Beis Hamikdash, the place remains the same place. So wherever you are, the same thing. The duties are the same. Okay, so now we're going to do some sing-song quickly. Let's go. We have a very short time.
What? We're going up.
After your speech, I have to go down my Drake.
Oh. We're going up.